everyone, Dylan from the Smart Economy Podcast. Today we're joined by Daniel Fogg, the CEO of Rootstock Labs. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm great. It's nice to be with you.
Yes, we got to meet last night and had a little bit of an intro, but I do want to let the folks who are at home learning a little bit about you. What was just your general entrance into Bitcoin? What was your genesis story?
Wow, okay, so I'm Daniel, I'm the CEO of Rootstock Labs. My Bitcoin journey starts really back in maybe like 2011 with probably like Wired articles and just kind of like general exposure. I was working in defense technology at the time, sort of an emerging tech, if you will, and yeah, just getting deeper and deeper. And then 2013, I was at South by Southwest in Austin, and a very good friend of mine, Zafar, shout to Zafar, he was like going down the rabbit hole, and I'm going all to these kind of hardware and energy and IoT kind of talks back then. This is 10 years ago, and he was like, Bitcoin, and I was like, okay, and he kind of really dragged me down and started buying in like 2015, 2016, and yeah, away we go. That's my story.
So why build on Bitcoin then? Because Bitcoin is famously popular for this narrative of 21 million coins. It's this hard asset. It's the hard asset of the internet, and it's like notoriously hard to build on. So what made you want to start creating an ecosystem for builders to start building?
Yeah, good question. So, Bitcoin is an incredible store of value. As you talked about the asset there, but there's not much attention really paid to the cryptographic power of the blockchain itself and what that could be reused for. And really that's what Rootstock is, and that's what many of the other great L2s that are being built around Bitcoin are doing. Taking the cryptographic power of Bitcoin and using it to secure a secondary blockchain. And then that secondary blockchain allows you to do all kinds of things, smart contracts, launch USD stablecoins, full DeFi apps, decentralized identity, and on and on and on. So what we're really excited about at Rootstock Labs is how you can use Bitcoin to secure a secondary network and then turn the Bitcoin asset into something that's just, not just a store of value, this kind of digital gold, but actually is something which is cryptographically anchoring into a secondary network, which then allows you to build a whole decentralized economy.
And Rootstock itself is a side chain. What's the difference between Rootstock and Rootstock Labs?
So yeah, Rootstock was the first Bitcoin sidechain to go live back in 2018.
18?
Yeah, proposed in 2015, white paper published in 2016, and then mainnet went live in 2018. Inspired from like discussions the founders had with Nick Szabo, directly referencing and building off the work done by Adam Back and the team at Liquid, who published the first thinking around a federated peg to bridge Bitcoin out of the Bitcoin network and into a sidechain, and the first implementation of merge mining. We launched in 2018, just before Lightning. And I think it may be like 6 to 8 months or so before Liquid went live as well. So it's kind of a busy era. First Bitcoin sidechain, first Bitcoin L2.
So what are the differences between Rootstock and maybe some of the other OG sidechains like Stacks or Liquid Network?
Sure. So to answer your question then, so Rootstock is a decentralized, permissionless Bitcoin sidechain. Rootstock Labs is similar to many of the other foundations or ecosystem building teams that are there to bootstrap the ecosystem around the blockchain. That's exactly what Rootstock Labs is. We're core contributors. We have over 90 engineers and developers building out this network, and everybody else, including me, is just out there scaling the ecosystem. Difference between the different L2s? Yeah, so this is a really good question. I have simple and incredibly complex answers for you. So maybe let me kind of give you a quick potted history. So, I mentioned Lightning, Liquid, and Rootstock, and then you also have Stacks. These are all considered Bitcoin L2s, but the term L2 is ported in from Ethereum. In Ethereum, it means something very specific. In Bitcoin, it means something extremely broad. So in Bitcoin, it's any scaling mechanism for Bitcoin. Okay. And because Bitcoin's very difficult to scale, it kind of means anything, right? So if you look at like Lightning, for example, a state channel payments network, you look at Rootstock, an EVM smart contract platform. These are very different things, but they're both considered L2s. But you've got to be careful because you're not really comparing oranges and oranges. You're comparing bananas and pineapples here, right? So this is where like comparisons and benchmarks get really tricky when you look at TVL or transaction volume. It doesn't really add up. But if you look at how these the four kind of OGs have developed, they're kind of, and again, I'm out here building Rootstock, so my depth of knowledge and understanding on each of these networks is not that deep. But from what I understand and what I see, you've got Lightning basically as a peer-to-peer payment solution, doing micropayments on top of Bitcoin. You've got Liquid, which is a sort of permissioned, more enterprise-grade sidechain. Very similar architecture to Rootstock, but slightly different mechanisms. Rootstock, which is a kind of EVM sidechain smart contract platform, similar to many other EVM L1s, but anchored into Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stacks, which uses proof of transfers, recently changing consensus mechanism as well. They kind of came a little bit later, and they've kind of been tapping into more of that kind of experimental energy with like NFTs and ordinals. Then you have this other wave of L2s, which have emerged over the last kind of 18 months. Teams like Bob and BitLayer, all doing different things. Some kind of Polygon rollups, some Ethereum proof of stake kind of chains, which have some form of proof of work anchoring. So there's a real kind of universe out there. I think it's really important to come back to first principles, though, which is what is a Bitcoin L2,
mm-hmm.
and even go before the term Bitcoin L2, which was really kind of started getting bandied around in 2023, to what we were, which is a Bitcoin sidechain. So in order to be a true Bitcoin L2 or a Bitcoin sidechain, you need a cryptographic, economic, and monetary link back to the Bitcoin main chain. So what does that mean, very quickly? So cryptographic link, every transaction, every block of Rootstock is hashed on the Bitcoin main chain. That means that every single interaction on Rootstock is being secured with merge mining,
mm-hmm.
over 60% of the Bitcoin main chain hashing power.
Can you just take a sidestep and define merge mining as well?
Yeah, okay, so at a very high level, you're recycling the hash rate of the Bitcoin main chain to secure a secondary network. If you think about how that exactly works, those Bitcoin mining pools that merge mine with Rootstock, the header in the template that goes out into the Bitcoin mining pool has a 1 or 0 different in the header, which indicates essentially that it's being merge mined. Each of the merge mining pools run Rootstock nodes as well as Bitcoin nodes. Some other kind of interesting stuff. So this means that through this kind of hashing power sharing, Rootstock shares 79% of all of the transaction fees from Rootstock with the Bitcoin miners that are merge mining with Rootstock. Okay, so that's kind of merge mining. So it's the kind of core part of the consensus mechanism for how Rootstock is secured. What does that all mean? It means that Rootstock is secured by Bitcoin proof of work through the Bitcoin miners, through the merge mining process. It was the first sidechain to be secured in this way. It's been live now for 6.5 years, and it remains the closest cryptographic link that you can make to Bitcoin today. Other novel characteristics, the two-way peg between Bitcoin and Rootstock, something we kind of, was inspired by the work that Liquid did, and then kind of we have developed it through this defense in depth model into, the proof of work peg. So every kind of transaction, every interaction where the Bitcoin moves out of the Bitcoin network and into Rootstock is secured using proof of work and hardware security modules. And we have a whole kind of like complex kind of, I don't know what you call it, but essentially a good analogy here is that it's kind of the defense of a castle, where you don't just have one layer of defense, you have multiple different layers of defense with multiple different difficulty levels and mechanisms that you need to get through. And that's kind of how the power peg exists. And then to go, we're kind of restless though. We're exploring the work that Robin Linus's team have been doing around BitVM, and we developed something called BitVMX. BitVMX, we actually open sourced some of the early work yesterday, and we're going to be using this to create the Union Bridge, which we expect to go live at some point next year, which will be a second bridge between Bitcoin and Rootstock, using the disputable computation paradigm to basically bridge Bitcoin out of Bitcoin and into Rootstock. So we're super excited about that.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I guess really two things that I want to touch on is Rootstock. You've brought up it was conceptualized as like an EVM sidechain. So did Ethereum come and then Rootstock said we need to build something like this that essentially settles on the state of Bitcoin, or was Rootstock being kind of built in parallel and Ethereum EVM is just kind of like the easiest thing to use as an example to point to?
Yeah, so we always knew that Bitcoin alone wasn't going to be enough to build a new global economy, but it was actually the advent of Ethereum and the smart contract platform that Ethereum was that created our ability to kind of fork it, fuse the two together, and then create Rootstock. So it's not that Rootstock was building something and then Ethereum built something. It was the advent of Ethereum that enabled, along with the federated peg model that Liquid developed and the merge mining protocol that we developed, those things combined that allowed Rootstock to exist. So yeah, maybe first principles is that Rootstock really is the combination of Bitcoin and Ethereum together. It's the best of both worlds. It's the security and the store of value of Bitcoin with the composability and the programmability of a smart contract platform like Ethereum. So the two things combined that allows Rootstock to exist. So yeah, Rootstock is an EVM. It's a fully programmable EVM smart contract platform.
Very cool. And if you go on like crypto Twitter and you look at like the .eth profile handles, they love to throw shade at Lightning not getting massive adoption, Liquid not getting a lot of use, despite Adam Back kind of like chilling it his entire career that he's been building it. So we've seen a lot of these second layer solutions for Bitcoin not necessarily take off, but you also just mentioned earlier that 2023 was kind of like a renaissance because of BitVM and all these L2s that have been raising funds.
Yeah.
So where are we now? Like, is there a renewed interest in Bitcoin L2s? And does that tie into maybe Bitcoin ETFs in the US, Bitcoin ETFs across the world, and Bitcoin really becoming understood as this secured commodity network that cannot be shut down by a state?
Yeah, so, I mean, the short answer is yes. There's so many different things to unpack there, but Rootstock was first, and with that comes the challenge in having to tackle every argument, build an ecosystem of a type that no one's ever built before, do Bitcoin DeFi before anyone was doing it before, supporting some of the early movers on Rootstock who were doing the first kind of Ethereum-grade DeFi, but on Bitcoin. It was a long journey. And I think for a long time, back in 2018, 2019, Rootstock was friends of no one and enemies of both, right? For the Bitcoiners, we weren't maxi enough,
right?
And for the Ethereumite, we were too Bitcoin, right? And it was just seen as this kind of weird hybrid. What's really interesting is that kind of really has passed now. And I think the Bitcoin DeFi, the DeFi summer in 2020, 2021 led to a kind of surge in Bitcoin DeFi on Rootstock, but really it was only in 2023 with this kind of understanding of what a scaling layer for Bitcoin could unlock. And then a number of technology triggers, so like zero knowledge rollups coming to Ethereum, BitVM kind of shining a light on a path towards developing zero knowledge verification and doing disputable computation on Bitcoin, and then the potential of Opcat, like a hard fork of Bitcoin. All of this kind of created a path where lots of different teams simultaneously sort of said, "Hey, actually, there might be something here, and we can scale this." So this, along with like us and Stacks and many of the other ecosystems who were kind of the OGs, like banging the drum for Bitcoin L2s and the opportunity that Bitcoin DeFi is, kind of led to this kind of surge, and it's thrilling. I mean, it's kind of easily like 15 to 18 like Bitcoin L2s now. There's maybe 10 large ones, and I think there's something like 80 L2s and forms of roll-up on Bitcoin being proposed right now. It's all super exciting. It does lead to some questions though, which is, what are the architectures? Can you trust your Bitcoin on a sidechain that's only launched a few months ago? The advantage of something like Rootstock and the long journey we've been on is, it's been live for 6.5 years. The merge mining protocol has been proven to work. The proof of work peg, despite challenges, we've made it as good as it possibly can be. It's the only way today that's live to bridge Bitcoin out without using any kind of centralized custodian. And it's never gone down, and we're kind of we're building away. So despite the challenges and the long journey, like actually that's become a real strength, because now we're seeing the surge in interest. We're also seeing a lot of interest for Rootstock and what can be done. So and I think just to kind of finish that point, one of the challenges, in Rootstock, Bitcoin is king. There was no pre-mined token. There's no competing money token. You use Bitcoin for gas. You kind of bring Bitcoin in decentralized way through the peg. You unlock RBTC and you're in. You can do Bitcoin DeFi, and you don't need to get access to any competing money token. But while that's brilliant and it's kind of maximalist vision, and it kind of means that the alignment between Rootstock and Bitcoin is total, it also means that the kind of value capture mechanism that Rootstock inherits from Bitcoin doesn't necessarily advantage the developers and the builders and the investors on Rootstock. And so we've been trying to tackle this problem for a while now, and in 2019 we launched the Rift token and we launched the Rift protocols to scale. Rootstock, and we've tried a number of different approaches here. We've launched some great protocols with Rift Flyover in active production today as a mechanism to get in and out of Rootstock. Rift Relay now in active production by the Bolts team to build a connection point between Lightning and Rootstock, which is an incredible implementation. RNS, so everyone in the Rootstock ecosystem's got their .rsk domain instead of .eth. But we've kind of finally now launched an ecosystem scaling DAO called the Rootstock Collective. We launched a couple of months ago by a really dedicated team inside the ecosystem, and it allows anybody to basically use Rift tokens, stake them in the DAO, get access to voting power within the DAO, and then start to vote on some of the key decisions to scaling the ecosystem, like who receives grants, how should the fees for the ecosystem be distributed, and all these kind of great things. And in a couple of weeks, we're launching something really exciting, a builders incentive market in the collective, which allows builders and stakers in the DAO to kind of vote on how fees from those protocols should be distributed, pooling them, and there's a big incentive mechanism around that. So our goal here really is to kind of continue on this track of decentralization, and for the ecosystem to really take hold of the scaling mechanism. And we think that this solves the value capture mechanism and incentivizes builders and developers in a way that is, disconnected from any centralized organization and solves the value capture mechanism that any Bitcoin L2 will face. And you can see this out there. You can see the new Bitcoin L2s struggling with this challenge. Like, how do you maintain alignment to Bitcoin while also having maybe a secondary asset and a value capture mechanism that incentivizes builders to build the network? And we think we've cracked that problem.
Are you starting to see like a divergence between the Bitcoin maxis who hated anything that wasn't Bitcoin and the people who are interested in just building in general, kind of coming into the ecosystem? Is the former becoming kind of quiet, or at least like their concerns being drowned out, and really creating a space for folks who want to build, having that ability to build freely and collaborate with folks like you and Rootstock, and maybe other BitVM enabled L2s?
Yeah, so I mean, Rootstock, we've always been pragmatists. We've never thought that Bitcoin is enough. We've always thought that you need a scaling mechanism to build we've been there for 10 years, right? The maximalists have their position. This is a wide and complex journey as Bitcoin reaches civilization scale. That's fine. They're kind of doing their thing. They kind of have a role that they play within the kind of ongoing discussion and narrative for what Bitcoin is and can be and can become. But we're pragmatists. We're less interested in that kind of debate. I think we're more interested in how do you build things anchored into this incredible security architecture? How do you develop protocols that are relevant for people on an everyday basis? We're kind of pragmatists. We're out there building. We've kind of been encouraged and excited by the experimentation that's come to Bitcoin over the last 18 months, and we kind of look at that and we think I've got respect for that, and I think I'm not a Puritan in any way, shape, or form. I'm open. I want to see this incredible, all this computational power, all this energy being used at civilization scale. And in order for that to happen, we need scaling protocols, we need experimentation, we need developers, we need open paths for innovation. Locking it down and allowing Bitcoin to create a new global elite doesn't do it for me.
Right. So Rootstock is here at a multi-chain event. Was Rootstock going to non-Bitcoin oriented events basically from 2022 and below? Is this the first, are you guys really starting to go out into the world and really kind of show the opportunity to build on Bitcoin now? So,
the builders in the Rootstock ecosystem have been participants in the wider crypto narrative for a long time. The Sovereign team, for example, the Money on Chain team. But at Rootstock Labs, we're, at heart, we're kind of technologists and builders. We've been quietly, this kind of idea that, in the winter, in the down markets, you're just building away. There's no team that's more evidence of that than Rootstock Labs. We've been going at this for over a decade. I think what's different is that the narrative around Bitcoin L2s has changed now. So where in the past we were, encouraging integrations and building an ecosystem in a slightly more quiet, less public way, now we're doing it loud and proud and kind of really riding this wave.
Awesome. We're at Permissionless III. What's kind of one takeaway that you've had at this event so far?
To be very honest with you, small, focused, very high quality. It's been great to meet so many leaders across the space. It's very kind of sort of condensed and focused. And I've really enjoyed that. I mean, one of the things I would say is that, yeah, the interest in what's happening in Bitcoin L2s is palpable. And the other thing I find whenever I come to any crypto conference is like how much is happening and how hard it is to keep up with.
Yes.
Even within our kind of component of it, the L2 space, which we created, helped create, right? I still am struggling to keep up with all the innovation that's happening. Let alone like debates around modularity or vertical integration within the kind of Ethereum world, or the kind of high-speed monolithic non-solidity chains like Solana and Sui and what's going on over there. Like, it's wild. I mean, the only thing I guess stepping back a little bit, it's very hard to see that all of this development time, all of this work will come to nothing. I'm really like, I mean, the advancement and the ongoing march of blockchain technology is there's a relentless quality to it. Sure, it leaves some dead bodies on the floor, but that's high risk technology innovation. That's inevitable. But it's great to see, and it's been really interesting to see all the other stuff that's going on out here.
Do you feel that negative regulatory pressure in the U.S. has any impact on the ability for this industry to succeed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, regulation, I'm a believer that regulation is not a bad thing.
Same.
Providing it's informed and providing it's clear. I think the problem in the US, certainly from what I can see as an outsider looking in today, is that it's not clear, and it seems to be, it's just not clear. It's not clear what you can and can't do. A lot of the regulatory guidance is informed by an old era of technology, an old era of markets. I'm confident that will break down over time, and we'll have a kind of more pragmatic approach to what the future looks like. I'm more encouraged by some of the regulatory frameworks you see in Europe, in the UK, and some of the kind of more experimental ones I think you see in Singapore and obviously Dubai as well, and others.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the kind of size of the American market and the kind of international reach of America means that what happens in the regulatory environment in America matters, and that's not just for crypto. That's for American politics matters. We're all outside the US. Everybody's part of two countries. You're part of the country you were born in, and you're kind of part of America as well. And what happens over here has a big impact in the world, and that can sometimes be very good and very positive when America leads, but it can sometimes also be very damaging when America regresses. Yeah,
we're feeling the pain on the inside. Who do you want to talk to, and what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, we're super excited. I'll look at the camera. Hey, we're super excited about what's happening in Bitcoin L2s. If you're a developer, we've got grants going. We're at every hackathon going. We're interested to see if institutions want to be introduced to different protocols within the network. And it's a great time to be building on Bitcoin. And the longest running and most secure Bitcoin L2 is Rootstock. So if you're interested in this, then check out rootstock.io.
Thanks for the time, Daniel.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to hear any more of the videos that we've recorded, head over to Neo News Today YouTube's page to catch all those recordings.